What are you doing? No, not yet. Not yet. Oh, good morning. Let's see. I missed you yesterday. I missed you. No, I didn't miss you. You were here. I missed you. And this guy, where'd he go again? Is it Zach? Is his name Zach? So we took everyone outside. So those of you who participated yesterday and going outside, how did you like it? Huh? Give me feedback. Why? Was it just get out, good variety, get out of this room? Okay, good stuff. So this morning we're doing Nehemiah 4. We're talking about what I think is the kind of under the water line of leadership, which is handling discouragement. Because if you're a leader, you will handle discouragement. I missed you yesterday too. Did I already say that? I already did say that. That's like twice I said that. I missed you yesterday. We went outside. We missed you because that orange juice messed with you. Yeah. You're better though, you think. You're on your way home. So let's pray. Father, thank you for this morning. Give us ears to hear and lots of good discussion in Jesus' name. How many of you ever seen Home Alone?
I have.
Hey, you have?
Probably 200.
Okay, so this will be 201. So the parents are on the plane, and they think they've forgotten something. Let's watch.
Did you lock up? Yeah. Did you close the garage?
I forgot to close the garage.
No, that's not it.
What else could we be forgetting?
Meanwhile, at the house.
Captain's doing all he can, but the phones are still underwater. We'll call his things from them, and I'm sure everything's okay. We forgot you.
Let's count.
Okay, Mother.
Okay. All right, you think she's discouraged a little bit?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I need someone to read Nehemiah 4, 1 to 6, and then I need someone after that to read Nehemiah 4, 7 through 11. Who'll volunteer for me? Colby. 1 to 6, and who'll get 7 to 11? Give me a girl. Emma, thank you, dear. Once you're there, read away. Nehemiah 4, handling discouragement. Got it, Colbs?
I believe I do.
All right, thanks.
Now when Sanballat heard that we were building the wall, he was angry and greatly enraged, and he jeered at the Jews. And he said to the priests of his brothers and to the army of Samaria, and burned ones at that. Up to Badin the Amorite was beside him, and he said, "Yes, what are they building? If a flock goes up on it, it will break down their stone wall. Hear, O God, hear, O our God, for we are despised. Turn back their taunt on their own heads and give them up to be plundered into the land where they are captive. Do not cover their guilt, and let not their sin be blotted out from your sight, for they have provoked you to anger in the presence of the builders." So we built the wall, and all the wall was joined together to half its height, for the people had a mind to work.
Okay, verse 6 is huge because they've built the wall till half, and then all of a sudden they're going to get attacked, and they're going to get insulted, and they're going to get criticized, and this is where all the blame, the discouragement is going to come at Nehemiah and his people. That happens a lot with us. So we were building years ago in our house a basement, and we built it till it was really about halfway done, and we ran out of money. And so it sat there for like a year, this unfinished basement. And that's where the discouragement came in, just on a human level. So this is where they are. They've built the walls to half its height, and then all of the insults are going to start happening. Okay, verse 7 through 11. Emma?
But when the Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the people of Ashdod heard that the repairs to Jerusalem's walls had gone ahead, and that the gaps were being closed, they were very angry. They all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and stir up trouble against it. But we prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet this threat. Meanwhile, the people in Judah said, "The strength of the laborers is giving out, and there is so much rubble that we cannot rebuild the wall." Also our enemies said, "Before they know it or see us, we will be right there among them, and will kill them and put an end to the work."
Okay, could you read verse 10 one more time, please?
Meanwhile, the people in Judah said, "The strength of the laborers is giving out, and there is so much rubble that we cannot rebuild the wall."
Yeah, the Hebrew idea is we have just run on empty. We've been running on fumes, we've been gassed up, but we have nothing left. We would call that in our day burnout. Okay, have you ever experienced burnout? What's that feel like to you? Can you put a word to it or emotion to it? Frustration? Oh, fog, like a mental fog. Yeah, someone else? Anger. Restless is a good word. Yeah, shut down. Yeah.
Don't care anymore.
You don't care, yeah. Okay, so I've got a list. I came up with a list last night before I went to bed. Some of my best thinking happens before I fall asleep. So I wrote these down. And I want you to talk about these in a, 3 or 4 people. Okay, what of this list, and some of you are going to say all of them, but if you could pick a handful, what gets you most discouraged? Okay, it's the opposite of being encouraged. I just realized a couple years ago the word encourage is actually to put courage into you. I'm a slow learner. What discourages you? Feeling overlooked, underappreciated, being criticized publicly, criticized privately. These are just a list. Laughed at, bullied verbally, not taken seriously, not being utilized in your skill set, having a friendship loss. This is just a list. Not accomplishing a particular task, miscommunication or conflict with a parent, or forgetting something important. Okay, look at that list and take about 2 minutes with people at your table, or if you need to flip around, tell them which share with your group which one strikes you, 1 or 2, the most for you. Does that make sense? Which discourages you the most? And don't just say all of them, okay? Somebody's going to say all of them. I get that. All right, you got 2 minutes. Flip around, talk to the people in your group. Ready, set, go. Can you guys see this list? Oh, being criticized publicly. Don't like it. I don't like being criticized privately, but I can handle that more. I think too, for me, some being underappreciated. And not being utilized. Which one? Huh? Can I write it down? That's a good one. What did you say?
It's like frustrated. I didn't necessarily get discouraged, which I think is funny, like they're not being taken seriously. I think like weird running up, like that's supposed to be encouraging her to like makes you want to try. It's like yeah, a lot of them make you want to try.
That and feeling like things are never going to change.
Lots of friendship.
Your beer is stellar. You got some Brad Pitt man fuzz. Okay, talk to me. What did you guys say? Let's see if we got some consensus or not. Yeah.
A lot of us, like individually or
Whatever, sure.
okay. For me personally, I don't. The most concerning things for me is feeling overlooked or being left out.
Okay, being left out. Overlooked. Okay. Just go around the room. Go. Quick hitters.
I would say
You don't even have to explain it.
privately criticized.
Privately criticize. Okay?
Not taken seriously and being left out.
Left out, not being taken seriously. Okay, cool. Colby?
Friendship loss and not accomplishing tasks.
Okay. Nurse? Just give me one.
Not taken seriously.
Not taken seriously. Okay.
Left out.
Okay. Back row?
Not taken seriously. Friendship loss.
Forgetting something important.
Okay. Last row?
Friendship loss.
Friendship loss.
I said feeling overlooked and then also friendship loss.
Okay.
Not being taken seriously. Feeling overlooked and then being left out.
Okay. Back row, back row.
Two of these that hit me pretty hard. The not accomplishing task would be my one, and then the not being utilized for skill set is two.
Okay.
Probably going to go with not accomplishing a task and being left out.
Okay.
Not accomplishing a task and then forgetting something.
Forgetting something important. Okay. Lily?
Feeling overlooked and also bringing something important.
Okay. Sam?
Being left out and friendship loss.
Since there's a lot of friendship and feeling left out, what does that do to you emotionally? How do you respond when that happens typically emotionally? What do you guys do with that? This is a safe place, so you can share, huh? You get angry, okay? Someone else? Yeah. You feel worthless? You hide. Does anyone pout? Pout? Okay. Pity party? Boom. Yeah, I do too. I get a little pity party going on. All right, next.
Friendship loss and not accomplishing a task.
Okay.
Underappreciated and being left out.
Not accomplishing a task, not being utilized for your skills.
Yep. Yep. Last row. First row.
Publicly criticized, laughed at, friendship loss.
Not accomplishing a task, and it's not on the board, but I also said overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed. Oh, excellent. Okay, you guys. You okay? You go.
Being left out and can't see it. Not taken seriously.
Not taken seriously? I think underappreciated. Underappreciated. Okay. Okay. All right. So some people hide. Some people get angry. If it's a relational conflict with someone that you like and enjoy being with, what do you do with that?
Work things out.
How so? How do you do that?
By talking to them about it.
Okay.
Praying about it. By trying to be mature about it.
Okay. Okay. Someone else. Relational conflict. What do you do?
If I think they want space, I'll give them space, and then I'll come to them later.
How would you know?
Based on their actions towards me.
Would you ask them, like, what do you need? Or not?
No.
Okay. You could just kind of smell it on them.
Give them a little bit of space.
Okay. Someone else. What do you do when you have a relational conflict? Yeah.
Communicate and work it out.
Okay. Yeah.
You ever seen those movies or anything where you guys get locked in a room and you can't leave until you figure it out?
Yeah.
That kind
Yeah.
of takes some tough love.
Yeah. Yeah, if you got girls who do that, they will, they'll be best friends after an hour, and you walk in with guys and they're like arm wrestling and tearing each other up. And
I wouldn't say the other way around.
okay, yeah, I like a cat fight with women. It's pretty fun. Yeah. Okay, so in Nehemiah, you've got a lot of movement going on. So you've got these walls getting built up, and so this is what happens when it gets down to some results of direction and vision. And this is the positive side. So when God's doing a work, not just in the walls, but in your life, there's usually some positive results of that. And these are the three things that I see in the text. First, there is growth. There's growth. The walls being rebuilt. There's excitement. There's joy. There's divine movement. Secondly, there's mobilization. You've got this in your little outline. I think it's session 4. Am I right? In their little booklet. And then there's purpose. When God moves, he leads. And when mission is determined and you figured it out, the Bible says here the people had a mind to work. Now, there's some negative things happening when God is working, okay? And you have to know, you have to balance the two, because I think as young Christians, we think, well, when God moves, it's just all positive. Well, there's an enemy, and the enemy stirs up people, okay? And so that's how sometimes the enemy works. Okay. What are those? The first thing is anger. Anger, here's your first fill in the blank of the day. Anger is vented. So there's a guy named Tobiah and Sanballat, and they get pissed, if I can use that word. The people feel attacked. Verse 7 says they were furious in one version. One version says they were very angry. One version says they were enraged and made fun of Nehemiah. And so Nehemiah has a mission. All right, tell me what the mission is. To rebuild the what? The walls. Okay, good. So, but he also has a higher vision. That's to get them to Jerusalem, to see everything restored so that God can come be worshiped in a building. The second thing that always happens, seemingly when God is doing a work, gossip. Gossip begins. Someone starts blabber mouthing something. We would call it a chatterbox. We would call it a busybody, a scutterbutt. Love the name scutterbutt. And they start misquoting things. They start saying, that's exactly what will happen. Someone will take something against you. They'll rumor against you. They'll misquote you. They'll take one line. It happens all the time in the political world. They'll exaggerate what you're saying, which isn't true. And then behind closed doors, they will backbite you because they don't like what is happening. And Rick was telling me yesterday that when he got here, he grew his youth ministry so much that the adult ministry wasn't growing, and he was asked to resign because his youth ministry was outgrowing the adult ministry. And he said, no, I'm not going to do that. And then they fired him. And you don't hear about that much. You hear about people getting fired for not growing, but they were growing too much, and he got fired. I didn't know that story. You got to remember that vision has no history. Vision has no history. So vision's usually about the future. And so the people, they don't know where they're going. And so Nehemiah's got to kind of vision cast that for them. The third thing that happens is suspicion emerges. That means, as we've talked about before, vision is the where. The mission is about the what. And so Nehemiah has got to convince his people, we're going to win the Super Bowl here. We're going to get this thing done. We're going to build the walls, and you've got to trust me. And so how many of you know that some people do not like change? You know that? So leadership is about acknowledging that, recognizing that you're going to be leading some people who are all in. You know, Andrew likes Clemson. My daughter, I'm picking up this morning at the airport. She's a Clemson person, and their coach is named Dabo Sweeney, and his line is all in. His big word is you got to be all in. And so he's trying to get his people all in, but there's a couple people who are not all in, Sanballat and Tobiah and a bunch of enemies. They do not want this building built, okay? So suspicion emerges, and then here's where you need to know. You got to have some thick skin because you will feel vulnerable as a leader. In fact, some pastors have told me that they feel like sometimes being a church pastor is the loneliest job in the world. They sometimes feel like they're all alone. There's a guy named Hans Bablinger who back in the 16th century wanted to fly. No one had ever created a plane before, but he started working on a plane. And during the day, his job was prosthetics, meaning people lose their arms and their legs, he would fix them up. And so he started creating this little craft called an airplane. Nobody knew what it was. There was nothing in those days. And so one day he got this thing ready, and he was ready to fly. And so he got about 12 of his friends to watch, and he dove off the cliff, and he soared beautifully. The wind was great. It was awesome. Well, the word got out to the bishop of Germany. Germany, spelled U-L-M. I've been there, so not much there. But the bishop hears about this, and he says, let's go watch. So he brings 100 people there to watch this big demonstration of the first guy who's ever going to fly, quote, a plane, which, again, they didn't know. There's no history of that. So on that day, it's pouring down rain, and there's no wind. And Bablinger says to the bishop, with all due respect, I don't want to do this because it's not going to work. He goes, no, you've got to do it because I'm the bishop, and you got to do it. He said, all right, I'll do it. So he went off the cliff, and he went, and he landed right in the river. And he was like mortified. He knew it wasn't going to work, and he had, cuts and bruises, and he didn't die, and he wasn't hospitalized, but he was embarrassed. So 3 days later, in that Germany church, the bishop who was there preached a sermon, and you'll never believe what the sermon was called. Man was never meant to fly. That was his sermon. And Hans Bablinger was on the front row of this church, and he quoted, I wanted to crawl under the pew. I was so embarrassed. And guess what? He never tried again. And it took till the 1901, 1902 with a guy named Orville and Wilbur Wright. You ever heard of the Wright brothers? They were the first people to officially succeed. Took a couple centuries to get that thing going. Someone will try to discourage you when you are a leader. Guaranteed. You can bank on it. You can take it to the bank. You can write it down. Someone will try to get you off chart, off course of your dream. Is this making sense so far? Because this is like something that hardly anyone talks about. If you go to a leadership conference, they'll talk about building a bigger organization or how to get the right people. Very few will ever talk about this one, because this is the one is where people quit when you're halfway through. What's that?
I said if they had a class on it, it'd probably be the most attended one.
I don't know. Maybe. Now, culprits of discouragement. What gets people discouraged? And what gets Nehemiah discouraged? Number one, being criticized by others. That will get you discouraged, right? And these are quick hitters. Number 2. Verse 10, experiencing exhaustion. Vince Lombardi used to say from the Green Bay Packers, fatigue makes cowards of us all. By the way, never make a big decision ever when you're tired. You know why? Someone help me out. Why is it good to not make a big decision when you're tired?
Because you're not thinking straight.
Yep. Anything else?
You might just pick the easy way out.
Yeah. Or you might be impulsive. You just do whatever comes to your head, you do it. So being exhausted, being fatigued, being tired causes us to be discouraged. The fear of people. Proverbs talks about the fear of man is a snare to your soul, but also the unknown. Like, what's going to happen? If we build these walls, what's going to happen? And if we don't build these walls, what's going to happen? Now, some guidelines on handling discouragement. Number 1, set a goal of serving others. Now, this sounds so counterintuitive. Did you guys miss that last one? Doop, doop. No, you didn't miss it? I'll go back if you need it. Dude. Fear of people and the unknown. Guidelines. Number 1, serving others. This sounds counterintuitive because when you're discouraged, the last thing you want to do is serve, right? And yet I found that's almost the remedy, that when you're having a pity party, or when you're down and depressed, or when you're anxious, or you're scared, or you're nervous, or you're worried, the last thing you want to do is serve. But I found that when you get off your fanny and you go do something for someone, it takes you out of your own orbit. Does that make sense? So this is what Nehemiah does. He starts serving.
I found that with encouraging others.
What's that?
I found that with encouraging others.
Yeah, right. Number 2, surrender your worries and anxieties to God. That's where you got to step up. Matthew 6 says, verse 24, he says, you can't serve God and mammon. You can't serve money and God. And then he goes on 6 times. Jesus says, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. And then he asks questions. Are you not much more valuable than the flowers, than the birds? So look down, look at the flowers, look up, look at the birds. But I love the word devoted, because Jesus connects worry and devotion. So someone tell me something you are passionate about, or you're good at, or a hobby. Just throw one out. Animals. Okay, good. Someone else. Give me something you're passionate about, huh? Snowboarding. Surfing. Boating. Rock climbing.
I said art.
Art. Someone else. Music. Okay, let's pick on Emma. Okay, let's pick on her. Okay, she's ready to check out. She's ready to go home. Emma, how long have you been playing music? Since you were little?
Yeah.
Okay. And she's pretty good at it, isn't she? Would you guys agree with that? Okay. Let's say Emma has Sunday morning, were you a little nervous leading or not? Not really. But was there a time when leading worship you get nervous, like really nervous? Yeah. And when's the next time you're going to lead music and worship sometime? Are you scheduled?
Probably the week when I get home.
Okay. And you know what? When you're ready to lead worship, you know what? When I go to bed that night, I'm not going to worry 30 seconds about you leading worship. You know why? I'm not devoted to your worship. You're devoted to it. So worry is triggered by what you're devoted to. So what did you say yours was? Snowboarding. Does anyone worry about his snowboarding? No. Most of you don't. You know why? We're not devoted to you. I mean, we like you. We're devoted to you, but we're not devoted to your snowboarding. What was your thing, Sam? Surfing. Does anyone really lose any sleep over his surfing? You do? Okay, I don't. You know why? I'm not devoted to your surfing. I'm devoted to you, but I'm not devoted to your love of animals. So the thing that you are devoted to, write this down, the thing you're devoted to, that's what triggers your worry. Do you think Nehemiah was worried about this? Absolutely. So the things that I'm devoted to are me and my family, my speaking, my writing, my discipleship, my university, blah, 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 blah. You don't care. You don't lose 1 second of sleep over my teaching, do you? Not 1 second. You know why? Because you're not devoted to my teaching. So the things you're devoted to, those are the things that trigger your worry. That's why, what was your thing? Yeah, does anyone worry about his climbing? Not me. I don't. I don't give a rat's. Oh, sorry, I can't say that. I don't care at all. I don't care at all about his, and I don't lose 1 ounce of sleep over it. You know why? I'm not devoted to his rock climbing. Now, if I got to know you and love you and see what you're about, and you said, hey, I'm doing this big climb, I might worry because my devotion is starting to kick in. So the things you are devoted to is what makes you to. That's why some of you will have friends who'll say, hey, pray for me, I'm really worried of that. And you're like, yeah, I'll pray for you, but you're not really worried for them because you're not devoted to that skill set. So Nehemiah is anxious and worried. The number one drug of today is anti-anxiety medication. It's the number one medication for youth and young adults. And this is a huge issue in our culture, is learning to let go and give God our worries and our anxieties. And I don't make light of it at all. It's a real thing. Third, you need to start having some boundaries. Nehemiah started to have some boundaries. And one of the boundaries he set in place for his people was Sabbath. Let me drone on this for about a minute. When I went to Asbury Seminary, my last semester, a professor grabbed me 2 days before graduation with my roommate, Dan Hawk. Dan Hawk was the dude who went with me across the street to Asbury College where we saw the girls, you know, that story. He grabbed us. His name was Don Joy. He passed away last year, 90 years old. He said, boys, guys, I've been watching you for 3 years. I love what I see in you. I love your commitment to Jesus and your excellence to students and to Scripture. I have one problem with you two. And we're like, whoa. And he said, come on into my office, come on into my office. He goes, I am scared you two are going to burn out because you guys are dynamic and people follow you. So promise me one thing. Promise me that you'll take 1 day a week and take a Sabbath. And I was like, well, what does that look like? You know, I'm just, 24-year-old guy. I didn't know. And I wasn't really a Sabbath practicer. He said, find 1 day. He said, whatever your job is, whatever your ministry is, 5 days a week or 6 days a week, day 7, you choose a day. Maybe it's Saturday, maybe it's Sunday, maybe it's a Tuesday. I don't know. Choose 1 day and don't do anything related to your job. Now, you see that in Scripture where he says 6 days on, 1 day off. Now, when I was in middle school, I played the drums. And I learned one thing about being a drummer. I could throw the whole band off, right? I could mess up the band, right, Emma? I could throw the band off faster than anybody else, more than even the guitar guys and girls. I could throw them off because it's a cadence. 6 on, 1 off, 6 on. So for me, I'll just tell you what my Sabbath looks like. It's a day that I become an introvert because my 6 days are extrovert. So my one day is I climb into my cave. I don't do emails. I don't do anything texting related to my job. I don't do anything related to sermon prep. I don't do anything related to teaching or mentoring. That's the day I shut down. You know why? Because that's my recovery day. That day then empowers me to do other six day things that I do all the time. So as you kind of grow in your life and your ministry, find that 1 day, that Sabbath, that's a boundary day where you say to basically people, can't help you today. And that's, so you don't have to explain either. Just someone says, hey, you want to do this? I can't. I'm sorry, I'm already committed. They don't have to even know your reasoning. But the Sabbath is a day of rest and play, and it will for you who are introverts, you'll love this even more, but it's a day to renew and rediscover and to be quiet. Sometimes it's taking naps. Amen to naps? I believe all God's people should take naps. So develop some boundaries of Sabbath, and I believe that God's people don't play enough and don't rest enough. And I believe that God has built that into our DNA to love that and to enjoy that. Does that make sense? Any questions on Sabbath? All right, we'll come back to that. Hopefully we'll talk about that. And then you need to learn to discern the source and motive of the person who is criticizing you. That's really hard because you don't know people's motives, but you can sometimes figure out the source. Chances are if someone is criticizing you, it's because either A, they don't like what you're doing, they don't like the direction you're going. So I went to this one church, and they did a mission trip once a year for their students. They took 100 students to Mexico. They were so proud of themselves. So I got there in my interview. I said, well, what do you guys do all year? Oh, we plan for this mission trip. Oh, that's cool. Well, what do you do the rest of the year? Nothing. We plan for the mission trip. Oh, like you don't have like youth group? Not too much. We just plan for the mission trip. So year 2, I added a second mission trip. There was one guy named Jim Reedike. He did not like that because this mission trip was his baby. And I kept telling him, hey, this is not an offense to you. I'm just adding some things because some kids in our youth ministry, they don't want to go to Mexico. They don't want to do that mission trip. And so we started to add things. So sometimes people are critical because they don't like the change you've made. Sometimes they see something in you that bothers them about themselves. In other words, so sometimes a parent, and I've had this in youth ministry 20 times, 30 times, where a parent is mad at me, but they're not really mad at me. They're mad at their family situation. Or they're mad that their teenager's rebelling. Or they're mad that they're not connecting with their high school student. And so they have to take it out on someone. And so they vomit on you. Does that make sense? All right, where are we here? Okay, some final thoughts. When someone criticizes you, recognize there's a kernel of truth to any criticism. So my friend says, chew on the meat, spit out the bones. If someone's criticizing you, take it in. Seek to be non-defensive. Don't interrupt, let them finish. Let them get it off their chest, which is exactly what Nehemiah does. He lets them complain. Relationally, restate the complaint to assure them that you understand. In other words, restate it, say, I think I'm hearing you say this. Is that correct? If you have to, say I'm sorry. Now, there are times that you don't have to say you're sorry. We should talk about that. If you're not sure the criticism's accurate, say thanks for sharing this. I'll take it to heart, which is a really polite way of doing it. Now, if they hurt you, give it to God. Bible says unforgiveness is a root of bitterness, book of Hebrews, and you don't want to water that. Remember, people worry about the things they're devoted to, and they could care less most of the time to what others value. They value what they value, their stuff. And understand this, very few people leave a church or an organization over theology, over buildings. They leave over relational conflicts almost all the time. Is that it? That's it? Okay, come back. Okay, we got a handful of minutes. Q&A time. What do you want to talk about?
So, what's an example of a moment where you wouldn't be saying, like, I'm sorry? So if it was like a legitimate criticism or like you did something wrong, then yeah, maybe you'd be like apologizing to the person. But what is a situation where maybe you didn't have to say you were sorry for something like that?
I'm pondering your question. Anyone got one?
It's just not true.
Can you ask the question again?
If you're with the if needed, say I'm sorry, right? So if somebody criticizes you and it's not like, what's a situation where you wouldn't need to say you're sorry, and how would you approach that? Like, I think you're wrong in your criticism, you know?
Something that makes me think of is, what if somebody criticizes your faith? You're not going to apologize for being saved, but you're going to explain why you are. Does that kind of answer your question? Is that what you're asking?
I'm assuming we're in a church environment. Like, we're both Christians, right?
Sure.
We're trying to maintain like a relationship in like a,
Sure.
in a church. non-Christian relationship, if you could blow that relationship off, it wouldn't really mean anything to you if they left.
Well, what if it's a worship environment and you raise your hands and somebody says, hey, that offends me, I'm not going to do that?
Right.
I don't know, I wouldn't say anything.
I feel like
I would say something like, I appreciate your perspective, but
You don't have to apologize.
a couple years ago, I saw this verse. It says, lift up your hands. And I just thought, that sounds like a really good idea, and I could just kind of like doing it. But I'm sorry that bothers you. There's a lady in my church that dances, okay? And a lot of people don't like it. And she's like all over the place, and she's waving. And so people have actually gone to the pastor, and that's called a triangle. A triangle is when you involve someone else in the criticism. I think you have to go to the person that you're upset with. Because if I'm upset with you and I go to Zach about you, number one, you and I haven't dealt with the problem. It sucks you in. Now you think negative of him because I've painted him as negative. So counseling family system says a triangle is when you and I have a conflict and I bring in you. And now you think negative of her because I've thought negative. Does that make sense? So you walk in and you say something critical about someone. So I've had that a bunch where I'm like, appreciate your perspective, thank you. I don't personally agree with you, but thanks for telling me. I'll ponder that. I'll think about that. And sometimes I've thought about it long enough to come back and say, hey, I think you're right. I'm sorry. And there have been times I'm like, I'm sorry this has hurt you or offended you, but I don't think I did anything wrong. Does that help at all? I've had that a bunch, But I tend to be a quick apologizer because I don't tend to like the conflict. I like the closure of saying I'm sorry. It doesn't bother me to say I'm sorry. But I won't just say it to say it. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, if something is meaning for, I'm sorry, will you please forgive me? That's one scenario. But we also say I'm sorry, and kind of what you were saying is I'm sorry you feel that way, but this is the reason I'm doing such and such. If it's something that's actually wrong, but it's their personal preference or whatever, there's a difference between needing to ask for forgiveness and being I'm sorry you feel that way.
Yes.
But I can't change the way you feel.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm not responsible for your reactions. How you feel is how you feel. But I also sometimes, I'm conflicted on what I'm about ready to say because I've done it. I'll sometimes say, well, I think the Lord has led me to do this. Now, I know that sometimes you use the God card and it seems good. And there's also times you'll hear a guy say to the girl or the girl to the guy, I'm sorry we got to break up. Why? God told me. Right? Have you heard that? And it's like, oh, really? How did he do that? Did he give you an audible voice? What was it? So I think sometimes I'm conflicted on that using God in it because sometimes it's actually true. And sometimes we want to put it onto God because we don't like the conflict. Instead of just saying, I just don't feel like we're meant to be together. I just don't think we're a great fit. But the moment you throw God into it, then you put it on God. It's like Adam. It was the woman you gave me. Right. All right. More questions, thoughts, comments.
I have one more thought on what Nate just said. Yeah, I just quickly looked it up because I did a study on this a long time ago. But Matthew actually addresses this a lot in Matthew 18.
Yes.
And it's in not offending the younger brother. If we know something is all right, but they're still understanding what's true and what's not. Matthew kind of tells us that sometimes we are to submit to some things of the younger brother while coming alongside of them and showing and teaching and showing the truth behind why what we do is acceptable in the sight of the Lord. So that's a cool reference place for that.
Let's go back to discouragement for a second. So how do you personally work through it when you are discouraged about something? What are some of the things you do? Yeah.
Get encouragement.
Mm-hmm. How do you do that? Do you go to certain people?
Yeah, go to certain people, say that I've really been discouraged lately, or I just feel like life is failing.
Does anyone do anything silly, like, I don't know, go watch Seinfeld or like watch The Office or just do something that's non-spiritual that just kind of gets you out of your funk? Does anyone do that? Yeah, that's okay. I think Christians need one or two diversions. I don't think we're Jesus robots all the time. I think we have to have some play.
Yeah, just going outside, being in the sunshine.
Get some vitamin D. Yeah. Someone else. What do you do when you get discouraged? How do you handle it? How do you beat it? Because it will happen. Yeah.
I think if you recognize where the constant, like when we recognize what some of these are, we recognize what's causing them in our lives. I think that comes down to not bearing the problem, but trying to solve it. So like if it's discouragement where you feel like you're not accomplishing a task, talk to the leaders alongside you and talk about why you can't accomplish that task.
Yep.
If it's something like the other one in my life is being either overutilized, which is kind of what Brett was saying, or underutilized, is communicating like, hey, I have a lot more to give that I can. So I really think it's just kind of getting into that, the mindset of like, this is something I can solve. This is something that I can make a difference in as long as I communicate where I'm at. I think trying to bury it and just go along with the flow is what ultimately takes people to their ultimate burnout.
How many of you are more the initiator in a relationship conflict of trying to resolve it quickly? How many of you more, you're the recipient, you're the one that kind of waits for the other person to come after you? Okay. How many of you stew on it for a little bit, like just let it simmer? You kind of think it through before you act. And how many of you are more impulsive, you want to get the conflict over with? Okay. Good stuff. One more question, comment? Good stuff, good stuff. I'll be back at 4, going to pick up my daughter and son-in-law and new grandbabies. See you at 4. You'll need a phone or a laptop or an iPad. You'll need some gadget. Okay? May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord shine his face upon you. May he give you. It'll take a miracle. Goodbye.